My ex-wife's father was a sitting family court judge in Travis County, and when he said I would walk out of that marriage with nothing, not the $4.7 million house in Westlake Hills, not my clinic, not even my name in medicine, for a while, he was right. But he didn't count on a frail woman in the back of my Uber recognizing my mother's cheekbones on my face, or on a stack of forgotten shares from 1978, being the fuse that blew his careful little empire open. I'm Daniel Brooks, 58 years old, former internal medicine physician, board certified since 1996, and until 2 years ago, I ran Brooks Integrative Medicine off Bee Cave Road in Austin, Texas. 23 years of patients, hospital rounds, Medicare audits, late-night calls, and CME credits, all gone in 9 violent months that felt like a coordinated hit. Except it wasn't some stranger who did it. It was family. It was my wife's father, Judge Harold Collier, the kind of man whose name could make a county clerk whisper, whose photo hung in 2 separate courthouse hallways. And it started the day his daughter, Catherine, decided she was done being married to a doctor who wasn't as camera-ready as her influencer friends' husbands. The divorce paperwork landed on March 12, 2023. I remember the date because that morning I was dictating chart notes and a sheriff's deputy walked right into my office, looked awkward, and handed me the envelope like he was delivering a bomb. It was a bomb. Temporary restraining orders, immediate disclosure demands, and, this was the odd part, a motion to characterize my entire practice as community property, including patient lists and future income. One problem: my practice predated the marriage by 4 years. I opened it in 1998. I married Kate in 2002. Separate property. That's Texas 101. But when your father-in-law has been mentoring judges for 3 decades, rules become suggestions. Within 2 weeks, my accounts were frozen pending equitable division. The joint brokerage was locked. The house, 5 bedrooms, limestone exterior, pool, 1.1 acres, appraised last at $4.7 million, was awarded temporarily to Kate for the benefit of the minor child. Our daughter, Emily, was 19 and in college in Dallas. Not exactly a toddler needing a pool and a media room, but the order still said it. And the worst part didn't even come out of family court. It came out of the Texas Medical Board. On April 4, 2023, I got a certified letter alleging concerns regarding prescribing practices, billing irregularities, and possible impairment. I don't drink. I don't even like Advil. But the letter read like I was writing opioid scripts out of the trunk of my car. It cited anonymous complaints. I knew exactly who the anonymous complainant was. I could almost hear Harold's voice dictating it. Pattern of patient abandonment due to personal matters. That's what the board letter said. The personal matter was my own divorce that his daughter filed, except the board took it seriously. They temporarily suspended my license pending investigation. Temporarily becomes indefinitely when you don't have money to fight it. My malpractice carrier jumped. St. David's revoked my admitting privileges. Overnight, Dr. Brooks became, "Sir, could you please park the car on level 3? That fast. I sold my E-Class to cover the retainer. I sold my medical library. I sold my mother's piano. And still the meter was running. The divorce judge, his golf buddy, set a 90-day deadline to produce full financials, including separate property claims, except my separate property list, the one I submitted, never made it onto the docket. I didn't realize that until much later. By August, I was in a 1-bedroom off South Lamar, renting month to month, watching the statement from my old house come in, pool service, landscaping, HOA, all being paid from what used to be our joint account. My name was still on the mortgage, but her name was on the possession order. Cute, right? My truck got repossessed after I missed 2 payments. That was the day I signed up to drive Uber. 58 years old, MD, FACP, deactivated by the board. Now taking airport runs at 5 a.m. because a judge with a personal grudge wanted to prove a point. I swallowed it because I thought I was beat. Because when a judge says, "You'll never work again," and he has already made half of it true, you start believing the rest. Until it was a Wednesday in late October, 6:40 p.m., drizzling, that blue hour when Congress Avenue lights start to glow. I picked up a trip from the Driscoll Hotel to a retirement community in Westlake. Pickup name, E. Porter. I pulled up, and this tiny woman in a camel coat, white hair pinned back, got in the back seat with surprising dignity. She looked at my face in the rear view longer than riders usually do. Then she leaned forward. "You're Margaret's boy," she said, like she was identifying a suspect. I almost said no, because it had been 11 years since I buried my mother, and nobody under 70 talks about her. "Margaret Brooks," I said. She smiled slow. "Wilson, before she married your father, we built something together. She never told you." She opened her purse with fingers you could see the bones in and pulled out a worn business card. Porter and Wilson Biopharmaceuticals, 1978. We called it that before we rebranded. We were going to give Pfizer a migraine. I laughed, even though I didn't understand. My mother was a nurse. She did small clinical trials. She didn't start a pharma company. "Your mother was the science," the woman said. "Stern now. I was the money. She kept her shares when I sold. I told her to. Smart girl. Daniel, right?" She tapped the card. "She told me if she died before you, these would go to you. I assumed you claimed them. The valuation last quarter." She stopped. "Pull over, dear." I pulled into the Trader Joe's lot on Bee Cave and put the car in park. My hands were shaking in a way I hadn't felt since delivering bad news to a patient. "Ma'am, I think there's a mistake. I just went through a divorce." If there were assets, they would have come up. She frowned now, really confused. "Your mother and I founded Riverton Therapeutics. We were acquired in 2019 by Argentex Pharma. They paid out former founding shares in a conversion schedule. Your mother's shares converted to 312,000 Argentex shares, Class B, with a lockup that expired 2022. Daniel, those shares are worth just over $8 million. $8 million. I stared at the steering wheel while rain ticked the windshield. Suddenly, all the weird moments in the divorce rushed back. My requests for continuance being denied. Kate's lawyer insisting on complete discovery already filed. The judge telling me during final hearing in December, "Doctor, you have represented to this court that you possess no separate property of consequence." I had never said that. I had said I will produce documents when I can access my late mother's storage unit in San Antonio. The transcript, I later found out, didn't contain that second sentence. It stopped after "I will produce documents." "Did my ex-wife contact you?" I asked the old woman. She shook her head. "You were in Morocco with Doctors Without Borders when your mother passed, so the attorney mailed to your Austin address. If your wife intercepted it..." She trailed off. "I kept waiting to hear from you. That's when heat hit my face, not shame, but a clean, angry heat. Because suddenly it wasn't just divorce. It was fraud. Fraud on the court. And in Texas, fraud on the court can blow a final decree wide open. Harold knew. Of course he knew. He was the one who'd helped us set up mail forwarding years ago. He knew what addresses were active. He knew who got what. I drove Miss Porter home slowly. Before she got out, she squeezed my hand. "I'm giving you my lawyer's number. He handled the acquisition. He can certify the share history. Your mother wanted you protected from small men." Small men. She meant Harold. The next morning, I called the number. The firm in Houston still had the file. They emailed me the original 1978 partnership agreement, signed Margaret L. Wilson. They had the 2019 conversion into Argentex shares. They had a letter from 2022, marked return to sender, addressed to me at my marital home, the $4.7 million one I no longer lived in. And they had one bomb, an email from July 2023, right in the middle of my divorce, from Kay Collier asking, "Will these legacy shares be considered Daniel's or part of the community estate?" The firm had replied with one line, "These are clearly separate property, derived from mother's premarital interest." And then they'd heard nothing. Kate knew. She asked. She got the wrong answer for her. And then the matter disappeared from my case file, because her father was sitting on the other side of the chessboard. That was my leverage. I didn't have $8 million cash. Not yet. But I had something almost as good, a credible, provable asset that had been hidden during litigation. I called around until I found a litigation finance group in Dallas that did advances on pending separate property claims. They looked at the documents, saw Argentex was trading, saw the law firm was legit, and within a week I had $180,000 wired into a new account in my name only. Not enough to retire. Enough to fight. Enough to hire someone Harold couldn't bully. I found attorney number 4, because the first 3 were scared of crossing Harold. This one was not. Her name was Olivia Marquez, out of San Antonio, former Assistant Attorney General. Her first question, did the presiding judge disclose on the record that he plays golf with your father-in-law? I said no. She smiled without humor. Great. We're not just reopening your divorce. We're opening the bench we filed on November 14th, 2024. A petition for bill of review and motion to vacate final decree for extrinsic fraud. Fancy words. What it really said was, the court was lied to. The judge was misled. An entire class of separate property, valued conservatively at $8 million, was concealed from the respondent because the petitioner and her father, a sitting judge in this county, intercepted notice. We attached the 2019 acquisition, the returned mail, the July 2023 email from Kate, and, because Olivia was nasty in the precise way I needed, an affidavit from Ms. Porter, age 83, former CEO, saying, "I saw him driving Uber. He had no idea." But Olivia didn't stop there. She sent a separate packet to the Texas State Commission on Judicial Conduct. Not about my divorce judge. About retired Judge Harold E. Collier, who, despite being retired, still took assignments and advised on family cases. We alleged undue influence, ex parte communications, and this was the part Harold would hate most, use of judicial status to secure favorable outcomes for a family member. It was all true. We just finally said it out loud. That's when the pushback started. 3 days after filing, a letter from the Texas Medical Board arrived. Your matter will be set for informal settlement conference on January 9, 2025. Failure to appear may result in revocation. Odd timing, right? Then Olivia got a call from a concerned colleague in Austin telling her, "This is a bad hill to die on. Collier still has friends." Then my Uber account got hit with 3 false safety complaints in a week. One said I smelled of alcohol. One said I made political comments. Uber put me on hold for 48 hours. Cute, sloppy, desperate. Except I was documenting now. Every call, every email, every attempt to spook me. Olivia filed a motion to preserve electronic records from Kate's law firm. We subpoenaed postal records. We asked Argentex for a custodian of records affidavit. We even pulled the deed history on the $4.7 million house. That's when we found the mid-roll surprise that made everything bigger. On May 2nd, 2023, 2 months after I was served, 1 month before the temporary orders hearing, Kate and Harold had recorded a deed of trust to secure assumption on the house in favor of a shell LLC called Lone Star Heritage Partners. The mailing address? Harold's Chambers P.O. Box. The effect? If I ever got the house back, it would be encumbered by a debt I never signed. That was premeditated asset shielding. Not sloppy at all. Intentional. Olivia's eyes lit up. They touched real property during pending litigation without disclosure. Judges hate that. January 9th, 2025 could have been the day they finally cut my medical throat. I walked into the Texas Medical Board's ISG room, wearing the same suit I wore to my mother's funeral. On the other side of the table sat 2 doctors and 1 public member. And, next to board counsel, just far enough back to claim he was only observing, sat Harold. Old man perfect. Navy suit, flag pin, reading glasses. He didn't even look at me. He looked bored, like this was just cleanup. Board counsel started in about multiple missed appointments and questions about impairment. I waited. Then I slid a folder across. In it, divorce filings, frozen accounts, and a printout of Kate's July 2023 email about the Argentix shares. I said, "The source of every anonymous complaint is the opposing party in a divorce who was being quietly assisted by a sitting judge. That same judge is in this room today." The public member looked back at Harold, like I just said the room was on fire. Board counsel asked Harold if he wanted to make a statement. He said, in that low, pitying voice he uses on juries, "I'm here only as family. My only concern is for my granddaughter's stability." I said, "Your granddaughter is 20. This was never about her. The physicians on the panel asked me, if your finances were restored, would you return to practice? I said yes, tomorrow. I was never impaired. I was poor. 2 weeks later, we got the letter. The board declines to impose disciplinary action at this time. The matter is closed. No apology. No confession. But I was cleared. My license, the thing he tried to take forever, was still mine. That was the first brick back in the wall. Meanwhile, the judicial conduct complaint did what it was supposed to do. It spooked the local bench. Suddenly, our bill of review got a visiting judge from Houston, not one of Harold's barbecuing buddies. February 24th, 2025, we had our first hearing. Kate came in full country club widow chic, even though she wasn't widowed. Harold came in late. The visiting judge, a black woman with silver hair, asked the easiest question in the world. "Why, Ms. Collier, did you email counsel in July 2023 about $8 million in potential separate property and then failed to disclose it to this court?" Kate said, "I thought it was community." The judge said, "Then why didn't you say that, under oath, in your inventory?" Kate looked at her father. Everyone saw it. Everyone. And in that second, 18 months of their careful choreography fell apart. The judge found extrinsic fraud sufficient to set aside the property division. She didn't make us try the whole divorce again. That would come later. But she did what I asked for. She froze the house. She voided the May 2 deed to Lone Star Heritage Partners. She ordered Kate to produce, within 10 days, all communications with Harold E. Collier concerning Daniel Brooks's separate property and medical licensure. And, like a gift, she referred the matter to the State Commission on Judicial Conduct for expedited review, in open court, with 3 reporters in the room, because Olivia had tipped them that a retired judge may have interfered in a high-value divorce. Harold's jaw actually tightened. "I'll remember that look until I die. You know what happens to a judge whose name shows up in a judicial misconduct story tied to his daughter's divorce. He doesn't preside over anything else. He doesn't advise anything else. He doesn't get to walk the courthouse like it belongs to him." In April, the Commission issued a public admonition. It said, in the dry language of discipline, that retired Judge Collier lent the prestige of judicial office to advance the private interests of a family member and engaged in ex parte communications with a sitting judge in a matter to which he was not a party. That's lawyer speak for. He cheated. He got caught. He's done. The day that admonition went up on the Commission's website, Olivia called me. "We settle now," she said. "They don't want discovery on the rest. They'll pay." They did. We negotiated for 3 weeks. I didn't get everything back. That's not how real life works, and I didn't need the fairy tale. But I got this. Kate had to refinance the house and buy me out for $1.9 million within 90 days, or the house would be sold and proceeds split 50/50ths. She had to reimburse me $147,000 in attorney's fees. She had to sign a stipulation to the medical board that her complaints were made during a contentious domestic matter and not based on medical outcomes. And this was sweet. She had to withdraw, with prejudice, every attempt to garnish my future income, because suddenly I had future income again. But the best part? Argentex. Once the court recognized the shares as my separate property, the Houston firm completed the transfer. Taxes were ugly. Sure. I still cleared over $6.2 million in a trust Olivia set up so no one could accidentally freeze it again. I paid off my apartment. I bought a modest house in Dripping Springs, nothing like the Westlake Palace, but mine. And I wrote a check for $100,000 to Miss Porter's favorite foundation, because if she hadn't gotten into my Uber that night, I'd still be hustling airport rides thinking I was broke, because a judge said I was. I still drive sometimes, not because I need the money, because I like the reminder. I like passing the Driscoll, and remembering the night a stranger told me my mother had built a life raft for me 47 years earlier, and I almost let it drift past because I was too ashamed to look up. Harold doesn't walk like a king in the courthouse anymore. He resigned for health reasons. Kate didn't invite me to Emily's engagement party, but my daughter called me separately, apologized for believing her grandfather, and asked if I could help with medical insurance during her grad program. I said yes. I can say yes again. People think revenge is yelling or slamming a door or watching someone get dragged away in cuffs. That's TV. Real revenge is restoring what someone stole and making the thief sign the paperwork that says, in black and white, I lied. Real revenge is sitting with a cup of coffee in a kitchen you paid for yourself, opening an email from the medical board that says your license is active, and knowing the man who promised you would never work again had to watch you rise anyway. And for me, the sweetest part is this. The day the settlement check cleared, I drove past the old Westlake house. Landscaping was overgrown. Pool guys hadn't come. Maybe money was a little tighter now that Daddy couldn't fix things. I smiled and kept driving, because the boy Margaret raised did work again. He just worked around a judge instead of